Hello guys, today we will take notes on classifying rational numbers. I hope you have printed the notes. If not, pause the video and print the notes. And when you're ready, resume the video. So let's get started. Definitions. Whole numbers. Whole numbers are positive counting numbers including zeros. So let's go ahead and write positive in the first blank. And counting in the second. So examples of counting numbers: 0, 1, 2. We can skip a few. 75, 78, and so on. Now there's a few that can be numbers that can be disguised as decimals, but they're whole numbers. So an example of that would be 13.0. That's definitely a whole number. That 0 is just a placeholder. Or they can disguise fractions, and it probably would be an improper fraction. So 12 over 4. It's improper, it's a fraction, but you can simplify that. Remember, always reduce your improper fractions by dividing, and 12 divided by 4 equals 3. So that's definitely a whole number. Let's move on to integers. Integers is any whole number that can be positive, negative, or 0. So in the blank, we're going to write whole number, whole. And examples could be negative 78, negative 8, 0, 12, and we could disguise negative 13.0 as a decimal, but it's definitely a whole number. And we can do the same thing with 12 over 4. We can make that a negative 12 over 4, and when you simplify it and reduce it, that's a negative 3. So then that becomes an integer. Rational numbers, any number that can be written as a fraction or a decimal. So the first blank, let's write fraction. And the second decimal. So examples would be negative 14.6, 3/8, 1.66. Remember, we know that's a repeating decimal, so we're going to add that line to show above to show that it's repeating, or negative 1 and 1/4, or positive or negative 3 over 7. So a rational number could be a fraction, whether it's a proper or improper, positive or negative. It can also be a decimal, but a decimal has to be a terminating or a repeating decimal with a determined pattern. Okay, so is it a whole number, an integer, or a rational number? So 3 2/5. So that's definitely not just a whole number. It's not negative, so it's not an integer. Because it's a fraction, it's a rational number. Let's move on to negative 7. Negative 7 is not a whole number. Okay, whole numbers are not negative. It is an integer. So integers could be positive or negative whole numbers. And now it could be a rational number, but right now we're classifying it with the most specific category. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that out because the most specific category is not rational number. Okay, 0.6. It's a decimal, so not a whole number. It's not a whole number that's positive or negative. So decimals that are terminating are rational numbers. 32. 32 is a whole number. It's not an integer because it's not negative. and it's not a rational number. Remember, I'm doing the most specific category. So I know we could say 32 is an integer and a rational number, but the most specific category is a whole number. Okay? So now I want you guys to try and classify each number and place it on the Venn diagram in its most specific category. I want you to try A through G. I want you to pause the video and resume it once you're ready to play. Okay, you're ready to check your answers. So A, 14.1, that's a terminating decimal, so that would be a rational number. Negative 7 1/5, that's a fraction, so that would be a rational number. Negative 8, definitely an integer. D, 21/3, it's an improper fraction, but it can be simplified to 7 wholes, so it's a whole number. E, negative 4 divided by 2, or negative 4/2, can be reduced to negative 2, so that's an integer. And F, that's 10.0, which basically is just 10, so it's a whole number. And negative 7.2, it's a terminating decimal, so it's a rational number. All right, let's move on to the next activity. So the next activity is your exit ticket. Okay, I want you to work example number 1 and example number 2. I want you to pause the video and resume the video once you're ready to check your answers. And please don't forget to do your strategies. Okay, it's very important. Okay, let's see how you did. So, number 1, which statement correctly describes the following numbers? So let's classify these. 3.9, that's a rational number, so I'm going to put R. Negative 12, that's an integer. 6.1, it's a decimal, it's terminating, so rational number. Negative 1.8, it's a decimal, it doesn't matter, it's negative, it's a rational number. 15.0, that's a whole number. They try to trick you with that 0.0, but that 0 is just a placeholder. So let's see at A, negative 12 and negative 1.8 are integers. Okay, so these are my strategies because they are both negative numbers, which that is not true. They're not integers because they're both negative numbers. Negative 12 is a whole number, so it can be an integer, but negative 1.8 is a decimal, so it cannot be an integer. It's a rational number. So we want to be 15, 6.1, and negative 1.8. So I'm going to circle these numbers. Can only be classified as rational numbers because they have a decimal. So that's not true. 15 can also be classified as a whole number. So that's incorrect. Let's look at C. 15.0 is a whole number because it's a positive counting number. So I'm going to circle 15 and I say it's a whole number. And why? Because it's a positive counting number, and that is correct. 15.0 is just 15, so it's a whole number. So I'm just going to put a little dot beside it. And D, negative 1.8 cannot be a rational number. So they're saying it's not rational. Let's see why. Because it's a negative number, which that is incorrect. Rational numbers can be negative or positive. So D is incorrect. C is the correct answer. Okay, let's see how you did on number 2. Number 2, the number line below displays the values that Karen will be placing on a Venn diagram. Which of the answer choices correctly lists the values that will appear in only the shaded section of the Venn diagram shown below? So if I look in the shaded section is rational numbers, okay? So it can only appear, so it can only be a rational number, so keep that in mind. Sorry. So we're going to write only rational. number. That's the specific classification that we're looking for. Okay, so let's look at A. A is -3, so I would definitely say A is an integer. So A would fall here. B, it looks to me like it's in between -2 and -1. So I would say that is -1.5. So I would say, because it's a decimal, or it could be expressed as a fraction, and it's negative, that it's a rational number. So B could fall in this category right here. Let's move on to C. It's in between 0 and 1. So what's half of 1, which is 1/2, or 0.5. So that's definitely a fraction. It's a terminating decimal, so I would say C is definitely a rational number only, to be specific. And let's move on to D. D is 2. It's a whole number. So I would say D would fall in this category. So the only two that are rational numbers are B and C. So F says B only, which is incorrect. G is A and D only, which is incorrect. H is B and C, perfect. And J says A, B, C, and D, so that is incorrect. Okay, so the correct answer is H. Only B and C. Alright, I hope this helped you. And if you have any questions, replay the video. Thanks for watching.